Hello everybody and welcome to another video. What the actual blue balling Space Marines is GW up to? So GW dropped a weird video last night, very fun video last night, with a lot of information and cryptic clues to potentially something that could be coming. But what? Very strange. If you are new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment. We're going to jump in and have a chat about this because this is mental. Okay, so what am I talking about? So, last night around about tea time-ish, GW randomly dropped this really weird video, and I'm going to be playing in the background in a very second. Basically having like a protest outside of Warhammer World talking about more Ultramarines. And there's lots of really cryptic things in there about word bearers and Gilliman being the best, and people complaining that we haven't had a Calgar for like 2 months and all of this. And it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek piss take out of all of the people getting angry over the amount of Ultramarine releases, as well as playing on it and potentially probably teasing new things that are coming in the future. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. So basically what I'm talking about is this video right here. They kind of played this last night. It's only about a minute long. It's mental. So there's a lot of things in there. Obviously, people talking about a Codex Ultramarines. They're talking about another Calgar model. They're talking about like more Ultramarine models. And we know that Captain Titus and everything else involving Titus is going to be coming very, very shortly, because basically the 500 Worlds is the end campaign narrative. Going into the end of 10th edition, and I've got a feeling this is probably going to be a bit like the Dark of Omens, where we're going to a book or a campaign type thing in the 500 Worlds around individual characters. I'm still fingers crossed that Lehman Russ is going to be a part of that, and we're going to get a little bit more Space Wolf love as well. But there's a lot of kind of cool things here, and they're kind of heavily hinting here at a Codex Ultramarines. Now, let's talk about this. So, I was in the process of doing a video about why the Space Wolf Codex doesn't currently work with Codex Space Marines. And I was going through everything about how the Space Wolf units don't tie into the Codex Space Marine, and the Codex Space Marine units don't tie into the Space Wolf Codex stuff, and there's certain other things as well with like the Black Templars and the Dark Angels kind of doing the same thing, but it's mainly really evident with the Space Wolf book. And basically what I'm trying to explain is Ragnar Blackmane is a Wolf Lord, but he can only join Space Wolf units, so Head Takers, Blood Claws, and Grey Hunters. But if you want a generic Wolf Lord, which we don't actually have in the Codex, and you use a Space Marine Captain to be your Wolf Lord, so you want to make Bran Redmore or convert your own Crom Dragon Slayer, you can't run that model in your Space Wolf units. So he can't join Grey Hunters or Blood Claws or anything like that. He can only join generic Space Marine units. And that's kind of how it is right now. Librarians, using them as Rune Priests, don't work. Also, one of the other things is the Space Wolves only really have 2 transports. They have the Land Raider and the Impulsor. The Repulsor. The Impulsor, the little Rhino one, doesn't work with the Space Wolf units, because that can only take up to 6 models, and the basic Space Wolf unit, the Blood Claws and the Grey Hunters, are 10 models per unit rather than 6. Now, yeah, you could probably throw in the Wolf Scouts or the Head Hunters or the Head Takers, but that's about it. You can't really have small units, so you've kind of almost like lost a transport as well, which is really weird. Now Games Workshop are talking about a Codex, or teasing a Codex Ultramarines. What does this mean? Personally, I think this is a very blatant, tongue-in-cheek sort of teaser of what is to come for the Space Marines. I do think we're probably going to get a Codex Ultramarines. which is kind of makes sense. And that means I do also think, it's probably going to be more of a supplement book, potentially a codex. And if you think about it, the Ultramarines itself have just been given quite a lot of units. So we have Marius Calgar, the Victorous Honor Guard, Sicarius. We've got the new Ancient. We've got Titus. We've got his unit on all of his little guards. So when we start looking at all of the models that are coming or have been already released for the Ultramarines, and then you look at potentially more models that they're probably going to be getting, because there are a couple of characters there that we haven't got back, like the Chaplain as well, and a few others, that potentially they have enough units and characters to essentially have their own codex, their own supplement, so to speak, with their own detachments and their own element of flavour, which kind of makes sense. They are the poster boys of the Space Marines, but they've always been used right back into 2nd edition as kind of sort of the bedrock, the building block that you build your Space Marine army out of, until around about, you know, kind of 3rd edition, 4th edition, when they started getting actual like individual books for those codexes. So basically how it worked in 2nd edition is you had your Angel of the Death Codex and your Space Wolf Codex, and they were your 3 generic deviant Space Marine codexes. You then had Codex Ultramarines, which was basically your Codex Space Marines. It was your generic Space Marines. You had the Ultramarine stuff in there, but you also had a couple of other stuff, bits and pieces, with like some Imperial Fist and stuff like that. Then when we got 3rd edition, we got Codex Space Marine, and then you had a supplement book that added on to that for your different chapters. Then in 4th edition, we ended up getting Codex Space Marine again, and it had all of your successor chapters in there, and your other non-first founding unorthodox chapters, and the Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and the Space Wolves got their own books. The Black Templars eventually got their own book, and they were sort of like all the different myriad of Space Marines, but the Ultramarines were essentially core in Codex Space Marines, and it was kind of cool. I've got a feeling that this is where Games Workshop are taking Space Marines again, and I'm kind of feeling that because of how different Codex Space Wolves is and why it doesn't really work with the current Codex. And I've got a feeling that in 11th edition we're going to see this. So I'm probably going to guess that this Codex Ultramarines is going to bring all of the Space Marine stuff in and tie it all in together into a new sort of Space Marine Codex, called it Ultramarines, with all of the new Ultramarine stuff, as well as all of the new stuff as well. And there's been quite a lot of Space Marine things have been released that are currently not in books. So Drop Pods, Terminators, Ancients, all of the Ultramarine stuff, everything. Now, there's also the characters for the other chapters. So you've got the new Vulcan Heston, you've got the new Raven Guard character, you've got the new White Scars character, you've got the new Lysander as well, you've got and the new Iron Hands, you've got all of these characters that are also not in a codex. They are currently as a free download. Games Workshop likes to put these things in books, so we can sell said book to us, and we buy said book and we get all excited. So I've got a feeling that there is another codex coming, and it's kind of sort of going to be hinted at as a Codex Space Marine, Codex Ultramarines. So going into 11th edition, I do think we're going to start seeing Codex Space Wolves as a separate book. I do think we're going to start seeing Codex Dark Angels as a separate book, Codex Black Templars, and Codex Blood Angels. The reason why is the supplement worked when it kind of, there wasn't that much deviation out of it. I've always disagreed with Codex Space Wolves being a supplement. There's far too much in there right now that kind of warrants its own book. Now, currently, with Codex Space Wolves and the Space Marine book, kind of has a lot of problems. So one of the other issues, other than units not working with each other, is also the disparity in the units you get access to. So the Codex Black Templars basically says you can't have librarians, right? They've literally stated that in the book, you can't have librarians. Codex Space Wolves has none of these stipulations, even though technically we shouldn't have access to Terminators, we shouldn't have access to Scouts, we shouldn't have access to Intercessors or Assault Intercessors. Jump Assault Intercessors are different. We shouldn't have access to Apothecaries, and we shouldn't have access to Chaplains, and we shouldn't also have access to Captains and Rune Priests or Librarians, because we have Space Wolves have their own versions. Right now, as it stands in 10th edition, using the two books, I can take 30 Wolfguard Terminators, I can take 30 Terminators, and 30 Assault Terminators. I can take Apothecaries and Wolf Priests, I can take Scouts and Wolf Scouts, and I can take Grey Hunters and Intercessors. So basically, everything that the Space Wolf has as its unit, its thing, I can take what essentially the normal Space Marine version is as well. Now, they do mention Intercessors in the Codex of Grey Hunters that are not really Grey Hunters, but also Intercessors, which is, I think, is being added so you can kind of use the two and have a law stipulation, the same way as like Aggressors and Eliminators and everything else have a place in the Codex as Longfangs. But overall, it just doesn't work. And you get the same thing in the Dark Angels Codex. So the Dark Angels have Deathwing Terminators, they have Deathwing Knights, and they also have access to the Terminators and Assault Terminators as well. Meaning that Dark Angels have 4 units of Terminators. This kind of shouldn't be happening. There should be stipulations in the supplements saying that you can't use these books, you can't use these units if you're using a Codex Space Marine or Codex Space Wolf or Dark Angel, Black Templar or Space Wolf army, or Blood Angels as well. Because you've got your alternatives in that chapter. But right now, Space Wolves have everything in the Space Wolf, in the Space Marine roster, including their own unique stuff, which you kind of shouldn't have. And that's kind of weird. So that's why I'm thinking, in 11th edition, we're going to start seeing things deviate in a way. And I think this book is going to be the start of that, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I think this is what this is. This is Games Workshop teasing, Games Workshop prepping and laying the foundation for the new Space Marine book to come. Now, bearing in mind that one of the really weird things about this is that if we are getting a new Space Marine Codex before 11th edition, it also means that this time next year, kind of October, November time, we're going to see 11th edition Space Marines get a new book. Because we all know that the new launch box is going to be coming in the summer. It's going to have a whole host of new Space Marine units. Probably the fast attack element, like so the Vanguard Veterans, the bikes, and the other fast attack elements that are apparently getting phased, they're brought in. And the firstborn element of Space Marines is getting completely phased out. And there will be no more firstborn units in that book. It will be entirely the new Primaris. And that will then be coming out next year. So we know that that box set is coming in the summer. It's going to have a whole host of new Space Marines. And that a few months later, we will get the first Space Marine Codex for 11th edition. Which is a bit of a bummer. So Games Workshop are kind of going to sell you another book. If this is kind of what they're doing. They're going to sell you another Space Marine book. 11th edition is going to drop in about 6-7 months' time. You're then going to get a load of more Space Marine stuff, and then a few months later after that, you're going to get another Space Marine Codex with all of the updated stuff and everything else. And then we're going to start getting the codexes for the other armies. So, yeah, it's really weird and really kind of exciting. Yeah, like, I'll be completely honest, if I hadn't already decided to jump into Space Wolves, as my big Space Marine army project and really sort of get back into my nostalgia for my love of the Space Wolves, considering that with one of my first big armies back in 2nd edition, and like I've already said in other books, I still have my original 2nd edition Codex on that shelf. If I hadn't decided to do that, I 100% would be jumping into an Ultramarines army right now. The new Calgar model looks amazing. Rebooted Guilliman is a really cool Primarch, regardless of what people say. The new Titus model is great. I really love the fact that Titus is now a captain, although I'm a little bit iffed that he's essentially overriding Uriel Ventress, but I kind of get it. Space Marine 2 is such an amazing game, and it's really cool to sort of see that come into the tabletop in such a really cool way. I do think that they could have probably handled Titus a lot better in regards to giving Focus the ability to have a mission in-game where we see Acheron and Charion getting killed, and having maybe Titus turn back up at the end of a cutscene on a mission, on an operation, turning back up as captain of the 2nd company, taking over. That would have been a huge, huge moment to see, and it would have been really, really cool. But yeah, it is what it is. I was really hoping that Charion would be the POV character for Space Marine 3, because he is such a cool, badass character. And he is very much a bit like Titus. You know, he gets really angry and he just goes on these mad berserk rants and just starts carving through the enemy. And he's pretty cool, but it's a shame. So I do think that they could have potentially done it a little bit better. But I'm generally excited for what's coming. I think it's going to be interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're actually doing, because that video is really funny. Is there a new Guilliman model coming? I can't see it, but, you know, I'm really interested to see what we get. I can't imagine what else, other than a couple of other character models, the Ultramarines could get, other than Tyrannic War Veterans. Tyrannic War Veterans is about the only thing they don't have, apart from maybe three characters. There's the chaplain that was in charge of the Deathwatch kill team. There was the guy that went in a tank, and there was the sergeant in charge of the scouts. They don't have models. I think they're the only 3 Ultramarine characters that don't have models. So it would be kind of cool, maybe, to see them get models. That'd be kind of awesome. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And maybe sort of like an Ultramarine Iron Hands style character. That'd be kind of sweet. But either way, I'm super excited. More Space Marines is always good. Yeah, and I can't wait for it. If you are enjoying my content, please hit that subscribe button, like, share, and all that stuff. But make sure you do hit that subscribe button. As soon as I hit 5,000 subscribers, which I'm hoping to try to get done by the end of the year, I will be doing a big giveaway where I give one lucky subscriber a massive box of models, and a couple of others a nice little batch of dice from my sponsor over at Barring the Dice. But that's the video. You can check out my members and Patreon areas if you want to buy me a brew as a way of support. Thank you. You don't have to, but it's much appreciated if you do. And I will catch you in the next video. Whew! Awesome. Who's excited? I'm excited. I'll see you when we actually see it.